The grand city of Zellerith Prime shimmered beneath the twin suns, its towers rising like silver spears into the pale sky. Yet even amid such beauty, fear hung heavy over the streets. The Zelari Empire, once one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the Orion sector, was slowly collapsing. For decades, they had fought the Drax Dominion, a brutal, expanding empire that devoured world after world. The Zelari had lost half their fleets, their colonies burned, their warriors broken. Refugees filled the capital. Every day, news of another defeat reached the throne. Inside the imperial hall, the high nobles gathered in silence. Their colorful robes and jeweled crowns could not hide the truth in their eyes: despair. At the center of the hall sat Emperor Valen, his face pale with exhaustion. Beside him stood his only daughter, Princess Lysera, her silver-blue skin glowing faintly beneath the light. She was young, graceful, and proud, yet her heart was heavy. "We have reached the end," said the Emperor, voice trembling. "The Drax will be at our gates within a cycle. No one comes to our aid. The Keln, the Arveth, the Vari, all have abandoned us." A noble spoke, his tone bitter. "There is one race that offered alliance, Majesty. But—" He hesitated, his voice turning cold. "They are primitive, deathworlders." Lysera frowned. "You speak of the humans." The hall filled with whispers. The humans were a new species, only recently joining the galactic community. They came from a harsh world called Earth, known for its storms, predators, and unstable environment. The galaxy viewed them as dangerous, too aggressive, too unpredictable. "Yes," said the Emperor quietly. "The humans sent an envoy. They offer an alliance, resources, military aid, and command support. But their price is unusual." Lysera felt her heart skip. "What price?" The Emperor looked at his daughter with sad eyes. "They ask for a union, a symbolic bond between our peoples. Their representative, Captain Marcus Hale, has offered himself as husband to the heir of Zelari." The hall erupted into noise. "This is madness," shouted one noble. "A royal marriage to a deathworlder? They are brutes, not allies," cried another. "They fight like beasts, not civilized races." Lysera stood still as their voices echoed around her. She had seen the reports, the battle records. Humans fought with strange tactics and fierce bravery, even when outnumbered. They had no advanced shields, no superior weapons, yet they had survived wars that should have wiped them out. Her father's voice broke through the chaos. Silence. When the hall grew still, he looked at Lysera again. "My daughter, this may be our only chance to save our people. I will not force you, but I beg you to consider." Lysera's throat tightened. "You would have me marry a human?" "Yes," said the Emperor, voice weak. "For peace. For survival." Lysera turned away, hiding her trembling hands. She had trained to lead armies, not to give herself to a stranger. Yet in her heart she knew her father was right. "Without help, the Zelari would fall," she whispered softly. "I will do what I must." Days later, the human fleet arrived. From the balcony of the royal spire, Lysera watched as silver-gray ships descended through the clouds. They were smaller than Zelari cruisers, rougher in design with dark armor that looked almost scarred. Their engines glowed blue like the hearts of stars. When the flagship landed, a ramp extended and the human delegation walked forward. At their head was Captain Marcus Hale. He was taller than she expected, wearing a dark uniform with no ornaments, only a small emblem of Earth on his chest. His eyes were sharp, his movements calm, his presence quiet but heavy. When he approached, he bowed slightly. "Princess Lysera of Zellerith, I am honored to meet you." His voice was steady, deep, and strangely gentle. Lysera studied him carefully. His features were strong, his skin weathered by sun, his gaze unwavering. She had expected arrogance, but instead she found discipline. "Captain Hale," she said softly, her tone formal. "You come from a world of war. Tell me, why would your kind risk their lives for strangers?" Marcus's expression didn't change. "Because we know what it's like to stand alone. Humanity remembers what it means to fight for survival. You asked for an alliance. That means we protect each other. That's what we do." There was no pride in his voice, only conviction. The nobles behind Lysera whispered again, mocking the human's simplicity. But something about his words stayed with her. The wedding took place under the glowing arches of the celestial garden, a sacred place where royal unions were blessed. The air was filled with soft music and pale light. The nobles attended with forced smiles, hiding their disapproval behind polite faces. Lysera wore a gown of silver silk, her expression calm though her heart was restless. Marcus stood beside her in his plain black uniform. He looked almost out of place among the shining aliens. Yet somehow he stood taller than them all. When the ritual ended, Marcus took her hand and said quietly, "If you are my wife, then your people are under my protection. That's a human vow." His grip was firm and warm. Lysera looked into his eyes and saw no deceit, only truth. That night she stood by the window of her new chamber looking at the stars. A part of her wondered if she had made a mistake. But another part, deep within, whispered that this man was not what she expected. Over the next weeks, Lysera watched the humans closely. They were not as advanced as the Zalari, but their efficiency amazed her. Human engineers repaired old Zalari ships with speed and creativity. Their soldiers trained day and night using drills that combined both technology and raw instinct. Marcus worked quietly beside them, never asking for rest. He studied Zalari tactics, listened to her generals, and asked sharp questions that exposed flaws in their strategies. He was polite but firm, respectful but unyielding. When nobles mocked him during meetings, he didn't react. He only observed, as if memorizing their weaknesses. One day, Lysera asked him, "Why do you not answer when they insult you?" Marcus gave a faint smile. "Because arguments don't win wars, actions do." His words echoed in her mind long after he left. Then came the news that changed everything. A Drax fleet had crossed into Zalari space, burning through outer colonies. Thousands were dead. The nobles argued endlessly, afraid to commit their remaining ships. Marcus attended the war council in silence. When the last general finished speaking, he stepped forward. "You want to wait," he said quietly. "But waiting means dying. Humans don't wait for death." The generals glared. "And what would you do, human?" One sneered. Marcus looked up at the star map, then turned to Lysera. "You asked for an alliance. Now you'll see what it means to fight beside us." For the first time, Lysera saw something change in his eyes. The calm vanished. What replaced it was something colder, focused, fierce, almost terrifying. He turned to his crew. "Prepare the HSS Valiant for deployment. We move at dawn." As he walked out, the hall fell silent. Lysera watched him go, her heart beating fast. She did not know what the humans would do. She only knew one thing. Marcus Hale was no ordinary man. He was a storm waiting to break, and soon the galaxy would learn what kind of fury slept within a human's heart. The sun rose over the Zalari capital in soft shades of blue and gold, but peace did not return with the light. Rumors of the Drax invasion spread through the markets and across the spires. Every screen showed burning colonies and fleeing civilians. The once proud Zalari Empire now lived in fear of the next attack. Inside the royal palace, Princess Lysera sat in the war chamber beside her father and the human commander, Captain Marcus Hale. The holographic star map displayed a red wave slowly consuming Zalari space. The Drax were moving fast. "We have lost 5 worlds in 1 week, said a Zalari general, his voice shaking. "Their ships outnumber ours 3-1. They strike without warning, then vanish." Marcus studied the map silently, his hands behind his back. He did not interrupt or argue. His calm made the Zalari officers uneasy. Finally he spoke. "They're not vanishing," he said quietly. "They're regrouping. The next target will be your border planet Taraxis. It's the last line before they reach the core." The generals exchanged looks. "Impossible," one said. "Our sensors would have detected movement." Marcus glanced up. "You rely too much on machines. The Drax know how to jam your scanners. You should trust patterns, not sensors." His tone was calm, not proud, but his words carried weight. Lysera noticed that when Marcus spoke, even the loudest generals fell silent. Her father leaned forward. "What do you suggest, Captain Hale?" Marcus pointed to the map. "We take the fight to them before they reach Taraxis. A fast strike with mixed forces. Zalari cruisers and human destroyers. Small, flexible units that can move through asteroid fields and deep space shadows." One noble laughed. "That's suicide. You would attack an army with a handful of ships?" Marcus looked at him without anger. "Yes," he said simply. "That's how we survived back home." Lysera saw something in his eyes, something she could not name. It wasn't arrogance. It was certainty. Later that day, Lysera found Marcus standing on the balcony outside the council room. He was looking at the sky, his expression distant. "You're not afraid," she said quietly. He turned slightly, the sunlight catching the edge of his uniform. I've seen worse, Lysera tilted her head. You humans speak as if you've lived through endless wars. Why do you keep fighting? Marcus thought for a moment before answering. Because we learned long ago that peace doesn't come to those who hide. On Earth, we had storms that could wipe cities away. Predators that hunted in the dark. The planet itself tried to kill us, but we adapted. We fought together or we died alone. His voice was steady, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Your people, he continued. They built beauty. You mastered light, energy, and art. But sometimes peace makes people forget what strength feels like. Lysera looked down at her hands. And you think your strength will save us? I don't think, Marcus said softly. I'll make sure of it. That night, Lysera walked through the human camp near the landing field. It was the first time she had truly seen how the humans lived. Their tents were plain but organized. Soldiers worked silently, maintaining weapons and drones. Others sat in small groups eating simple food, telling quiet stories. There was no music, no decoration, only focus. She stopped near a group of human engineers repairing a damaged turret. Sparks flew as one of them welded metal with bare precision. Another adjusted circuits, humming an old Earth tune. When Lysera approached, they all stood and saluted her. You don't have to, she said quickly, surprised. One smiled. Ma'am, Captain's orders. You're our queen's daughter now. That means you're family. The word family touched something deep inside her. It sounded warmer than royalty or duty. As she walked away, she passed rows of human soldiers training under floodlights. They moved in perfect coordination, punching, rolling, firing, reloading, with a rhythm that seemed more like instinct than practice. Their eyes were sharp, their faces calm. They were not the strongest or the fastest beings she had seen, but their discipline was terrifying. The next morning, the combined fleet prepared for battle. The HSS Valiant, Marcus's ship, floated above the atmosphere like a steel hawk. Zilari's ship surrounded it, elegant and glowing. But the human vessel looked darker, heavier, like a shadow ready to strike. Lysera stood on the bridge beside Marcus as the ships aligned. You're taking me to Taraxis? She asked. Yes, Marcus said. You should see the truth for yourself. Her father had tried to stop her from going, but Lysera insisted. She wanted to understand the humans, not through stories, but through action. When the fleet jumped through hyperspace, the stars stretched into lines of light. Lysera felt her stomach twist as reality bent. The humans didn't flinch. Moments later, the fleet emerged above the burning skies of Taraxis. Cities below were already in flames. The Drax ships, massive and spiked, moved through orbit like predators. They're already here, said a Zilari officer in panic. We're too late. Marcus raised his hand. Calm down. This isn't a rescue. It's a message. The crew stared at him in shock. A message? Marcus's eyes hardened. Yes, the Drax need to learn that the Zilari are not alone anymore. The battle began with a roar of engines. Zilari cruisers fired long-range plasma bolts, lighting the sky in blue fire. The Drax answered with red beams that sliced through space. The human ships stayed silent at first, slipping between debris fields and shadows. Then Marcus gave a single command. Engage. The Valiant dived forward like a hunting bird. Its railguns fired with thunderous force, tearing through Drax fighters. Explosions bloomed across the void. Lysera gripped the console, heart racing. You're outnumbered. Pull back! Marcus shook his head. Never pull back unless it saves lives. His voice was calm even as alarms echoed. He gave orders one after another, fast, precise. His crew obeyed instantly like a single mind in many bodies. Squad Delta. Flank right. Launch the chaff drones. Redirect power to forward shields. The ship rocked under enemy fire, but Marcus didn't waver. Through the viewport, Lysera saw a human destroyer ram into a Drax carrier, sacrificing itself to stop the enemy advance. For a moment she couldn't breathe. They destroyed their own ship, she whispered. Marcus nodded. Better to die fighting than to live kneeling. That's the human way. Lysera turned to him, shocked by his calm acceptance of death. But when she looked closer, she saw it wasn't carelessness, it was devotion. These humans believed that every life lost meant others would live. They fought with something more than strategy. They fought with faith. Hours later, the Drax fleet retreated. The humans had destroyed twice their number with only a fraction of the force. Smoke and debris drifted across the stars. The Zalari officers stared at the battle reports in disbelief. Marcus stood at the center of the bridge, silent. His uniform was torn, his face streaked with sweat and soot, but his eyes were steady. "You've done it," Lysra said quietly. "You turned them back," he shook his head. "This was only a warning. They'll return, stronger. Then we'll be ready," she said, surprising herself. Marcus looked at her and gave a small smile. "That's the spirit." For the first time, Lysra smiled back. When they returned to Zellerith Prime, the people gathered in the streets to watch the human ships land. The nobles who had mocked the humans now stood speechless. They couldn't deny what they had seen, the power of those they once called primitive. But Marcus didn't celebrate. He visited the hangar, walking among the damaged ships and the silent rows of injured soldiers. Lysra followed him, watching as he placed his hand on the cold hull of a fallen vessel. "They fought well," he murmured. "They deserve to be remembered." Lysra felt her heart ache. "You lost many today." "Yes," Marcus said softly. "But every one of them bought time for someone else to live. That's what victory costs." She understood then why the humans were feared. It wasn't because they were ruthless. It was because they were willing to pay any price for others. That night, as the city slept, Lysra stood at her window once more, staring at the stars. The humans were few, their technology simple compared to the Zalari, but she now knew why they survived where others had fallen. They were not fighting for power. They were fighting for something greater, and in that moment she realized something both beautiful and frightening. Humanity was more than an ally. They were a force of nature. The red warning lights flashed across the command center of Zellerith Prime. The Drax Dominion had returned, stronger, larger, and merciless. This time it was not a raid. It was an invasion. Thousands of Drax warships appeared at the edges of Zalari space, dark and spiked like floating blades. Their fleet moved in perfect formation, swallowing light as they advanced. Every planet they passed was left in ruins. Princess Lysra stood in the throne room, her hands trembling as reports came in from frightened officers. "Your Majesty," one said breathlessly, "the Drax have destroyed the colony at Varian. They're moving straight toward Taraxis again. Their main fleet could reach us within 2 days." Emperor Valen looked as if he had aged 10 years overnight. "Send all ships to defend the capital," he ordered. "We will hold the line here," a general spoke nervously. "But sire, the humans—" "Yes," Valen said softly. "Summon Captain Hale." The human flagship, HSS Valiant, hovered above the city, surrounded by the larger but less battle-ready Zalari ships. Inside the bridge, Captain Marcus Hale stood with his arms crossed, eyes fixed on the star map glowing before him. Lysra entered the bridge. She had seen battle before, but never this kind of preparation. Human officers moved quietly and quickly, checking systems and issuing orders in calm, steady tones. Marcus turned to her. "They're coming," he said. "Yes," Lysra replied, trying to keep her voice strong. "And this time they're bringing everything," he nodded. "Then so are we," Lysra frowned. "We? You have only a few ships compared to theirs." Marcus smiled faintly. "Quantity isn't everything. Humans learned that long ago." When the combined fleet departed, Lysra stood beside Marcus on the bridge. She had insisted on going with him, refusing to hide in safety while others fought. The Zalari ships formed a wide defensive wall. Their silver hulls gleamed in the dim light of the nearby star. Behind them, the smaller human ships drifted silently, waiting. From the distance, the Drax Armada emerged, thousands of red-lit warships filling the void like a swarm of locusts. Their energy signatures alone shook the scanners. One Zalari officer whispered, "We're doomed." Marcus's voice cut through the silence. "No one says that again. We fight until we can't breathe." "Understood?" The officer stiffened and nodded. Lysra felt her heartbeat rise. There was something about Marcus's presence that steadied everyone around him. He didn't shout or wave his arms. He simply stood like a pillar of iron. The first shots came from the Drax. Giant crimson beams lanced through space, tearing into the Zalari front line. Explosions rippled through the darkness. Shields down on the Aurelian. "She's burning!" a voice cried. Marcus remained calm. "Signal all ships, hold formation." "Wait for my mark." Lysra looked at him, eyes wide. "You're not returning fire?" "Not yet," Marcus said. "Let them think we're scared." The Drax pressed forward, laughing through the open comms. "Zalari cowards, run before we burn your world." Marcus smiled slightly. "They're right where we want them." He turned to his crew. "Mark target Delta 9. Fire everything." The Valiant unleashed a blinding storm of kinetic rounds. The railguns roared, hurling solid metal projectiles faster than light. They slammed into the Drax formation, punching holes through ship after ship. The other human vessels joined in, launching precise volleys that tore the enemy's leading ships apart. The Drax suddenly realized the trap too late. The humans had hidden their ships behind the Zalari fleet to bait them into range. Lysera gasped as the dark space ahead of them lit up with fire. "They're falling back." Marcus didn't smile. "Not yet they aren't, that's just their first line." The second wave came faster and stronger. Dozens of Drax dreadnoughts charged forward, firing non-stop. The Zalari formation began to crumble, port-side shields failing. Rear engines down. Multiple casualties. Marcus barked new orders. "Rotate Formation 3. Push damaged ships behind the line. Prepare drones for counterstrike." Lysera watched him work like a machine. His calm voice guided every move. Even in the chaos, there was no hesitation. Suddenly, the Valiant shook violently. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Direct hit. "Forward hull breached." Marcus grabbed the railing but didn't flinch. "Seal the deck. Keep firing." Lysera could barely stay on her feet. "You'll be destroyed if you stay in range." He turned to her. "So will everyone else if we run. I told you before, humans don't wait for death." For hours the battle raged. Human destroyers weaved through the Drax lines, dropping mines that detonated with magnetic pulses. Zalari cruisers provided covering fire following Marcus's commands. It was a dance of destruction. From her seat, Lysera watched human pilots move with almost supernatural coordination. They anticipated every enemy move as if they shared one mind. "How do they do this?" she whispered. Marcus answered without looking away. "We train for the worst. We learn to move like one body because in war hesitation kills." He tapped the console. "Activate the Ares protocol." The crew's faces hardened. "Yes, sir." Lysera watched as a series of codes flashed across the screens. Moments later, dozens of small satellites hidden behind nearby moons powered up. They unleashed arcs of blinding white energy that cut through Drax ships like lightning. The enemy fleet broke formation, confused and scattered. Marcus's eyes narrowed. "Now push everything we have." The humans advanced. Their smaller ships darted between enemy lines, targeting engines and reactors. Each explosion was like a thunderclap in the void. Lysera's hands shook as she watched. "They're turning the tide." Marcus said quietly, "They're fighting for each other. That's what makes us dangerous." Then came the counterstrike. The Drax flagship, a monstrous fortress the size of a city, moved into range. Its central cannon began to glow. Lysera's eyes widened. "It's targeting us!" Marcus looked at the display calmly. "All ships brace for impact," the beam struck. The Valiant shook violently, alarms screaming. The bridge lights flickered. Metal groaned. "Main power offline. We've lost communication." Marcus steadied himself. "Reroute through auxiliary lines." "Don't stop firing." Lysera shouted over the noise. "Marcus, your ship can't take another hit." He met her gaze with quiet determination. "Then we'll make the last one count." The Valiant pushed forward directly toward the enemy flagship. Even the Zalari crews watching from a distance were stunned. "He's mad," someone said over comms, but Lysera could see it. This wasn't madness. It was purpose. Marcus's crew followed him without question. Every system glowed red, every weapon overheated, but they kept firing. Range to target 2,000 kilometers. Marcus clenched his fists. "All batteries, fire!" The final volley struck true. The Drax flagship's shields collapsed and explosions tore through its hull. The shockwave spread across space like a burning sea. When the light faded, the Drax fleet was retreating, what was left of it. The Valiant drifted. Half its hull burned, engines failing. Lysera stood in stunned silence. You did it." Marcus leaned against the console, exhausted. "We did it." Hours later, the survivors gathered on the bridge. The human crew moved quietly, patching systems and counting the fallen. The Zalari officers watching the battlefield were speechless. Lysera walked to Marcus, who was staring out at the stars. His uniform was torn, his face streaked with ash. "Captain Hale," she said softly, My people owe you everything. He turned slightly. No, you don't owe me. You stood with us. That's what matters. Lysra hesitated. You risked your life for a world that isn't yours. Why? Marcus looked at her then, tired but with a faint smile. Because when I married you, your people became mine. For the first time, Lysra didn't see him as a stranger. She saw him as something else, a man carrying the spirit of a whole world within him. Outside the window, the burning wreckage of the Drax ships drifted across the void. The sky itself seemed to glow with fire, and that day, across the stars, the legend began to spread. The humans had come, and they did not yield. The night skies above Zellerith Prime were no longer peaceful. The distant stars seemed to flicker with the reflection of approaching war. Reports had arrived. The Drax Dominion was returning, this time with an even larger fleet. They had learned from their defeat at Varela and carried rage in every ship. Princess Lysra stood on the palace balcony, her silver-blue skin glowing faintly under the twin moons. The city below hummed with activity. Zelari engineers hurried to fortify defenses while humans trained in the streets, preparing for what no one in the sector had ever survived, a full-scale Drax assault. Lysra's hand rested lightly on the railing. Her mind was a storm of thoughts. She had seen Captain Marcus Hale in battle once, and the way he commanded humans had seemed almost divine. Yet the coming fight would test even his limits. Her father, Emperor Valen, approached quietly. They return faster than I expected, he said, voice heavy with worry. I fear even the humans may not hold them alone. Lysra shook her head. Father Marcus does not fight alone. The humans are something more than soldiers. They are a force of nature. Valen's eyes narrowed. Force or not, their numbers are few. The Drax bring thousands of ships. Our fleets cannot match them. Lysra turned to the horizon where tiny lights grew brighter each moment. The Drax Armada arriving. Then we will see what nature can do. Inside the HSS Valiant, Marcus moved with his usual calm precision. The bridge hummed with controlled activity. Every crew member worked in perfect rhythm. Lysra stood beside him, her armor now fitted for combat alongside the humans. Marcus tapped the console. Sensors confirm the Drax fleet formation. They're bringing the Krethel-class warships at the center, flanked by fire cruisers. Estimated strength, 50,000 soldiers, Lysra swallowed. And we are less than 1,000 on our side, he said softly. But numbers alone do not win wars, she frowned. Then what does? Marcus looked at her with a calm intensity. Determination, coordination, and when all else fails, surprise. Lysra felt a shiver run down her spine. She had seen humans surprise enemies before, but something in Marcus's tone suggested this would be unlike anything she had witnessed. The first phase of battle began with Drax cruisers firing long-range plasma beams. Their red light tore across space, smashing Zelari defensive satellites. Explosions rocked the Valiant. Shields at 50%, shouted the tactical officer. Marcus's hand rested lightly on the console. Keep calm. Wait for my signal. All guns stand by. Lysra's eyes widened. Why don't you respond immediately? Marcus's lips curled slightly. Because they think they're the hunters. Let them believe it. When the Drax flagship opened fire, Marcus finally gave the order. Fire everything at once. Target all warlords and support cruisers. Prepare orbital mines for deployment. The Valiant unleashed a torrent of kinetic rounds and plasma counterattacks. White-hot projectiles tore through Drax ships, exploding with thunderous brilliance. Smaller human destroyers darted among enemy lines, striking with precision. Lysra could not tear her eyes away. The humans moved like a single being. Coordinated, precise, almost unstoppable. Hours passed. The Drax pressed forward with relentless fury. Their main cannons blasted anything in range. The Valiant rocked under the hits. Crew members were injured. Consoles smoked, but Marcus remained unmoved. Recalculate trajectory. Rotate damaged ships to the rear. Prepare boarding drones for counterstrike. Lysra followed him into the corridors where human marines were already boarding Drax ships. Hand-to-hand combat erupted. Humans fought like wild animals with trained minds, throwing enemies across corridors, dodging attacks with uncanny speed. One Drax warrior charged a human soldier, towering over him twice his size. The human caught the blow with his forearm, twisted and sent the Drax crashing into the wall with bone-shattering force. Lysra gasped. She had watched wars before, seen alien warriors battle, but she had never seen anything like this. Marcus moved among them, his presence a calming force. When a group hesitated, his voice commanded respect without anger. "Move, every second counts." Even wounded soldiers followed, inspired by the quiet fury in his tone. Meanwhile, in orbit, the Valiant launched the human surprise weapon, Project Ares. Lysera watched the deployment with wide eyes. Tiny satellites hidden among asteroid fields activated simultaneously. Energy beams lanced outward, cutting through the Drax fleet like silver lightning. Ships exploded mid-air. Formation after formation fell apart. A Drax admiral roared through comms. "Impossible! How can so few destroy so many?" Marcus's eyes remained steady. They underestimated the human will. Lysera finally understood. The humans did not rely on technology alone. They relied on creativity, coordination, and the relentless drive to survive and protect others. The tide of battle shifted. Drax ships scrambled, their attacks disorganized. The Valiant and its fleet exploited every opening. Marcus directed them like a master painter, each move calculated to maximize damage and minimize loss. Lysera noticed something she had not expected. The humans were not merely fighting for survival. They were fighting for justice. Every strike carried a purpose, every maneuver a statement. The Drax flagship tried to escape. Marcus's hand moved swiftly. Deploy intercept drones. Cut off their engines. Within moments, the massive ship slowed, trapped between human destroyers and Ares satellites. Lysera's mouth fell open as she watched the humans board the enemy vessel. On the Drax flagship, chaos reigned. Humans moved silently, efficiently eliminating opposition. When Marcus appeared, even the towering Drax officers froze. He did not shout. He did not wield a weapon for show. He simply moved with the certainty of death and survival combined. Lysera watched from the Valiant's viewing window. Her heart raced. She had seen humans fight, but now she saw Marcus in command, and it was more than a battle. It was a force of nature itself. Drax ships began retreating. The remaining cruisers fled into the dark, terrified of the humans. The battlefield, once filled with fire, grew still. The Valiant floated among the smoking remains, triumphant but battered. Hours later, Marcus walked through the wrecked streets of Varela. Humans aided survivors, carried the wounded, and repaired critical infrastructure. Lysera followed, her armor scorched and her face streaked with soot. "You didn't just fight," she said softly. "You saved entire worlds." Marcus glanced at her. "We did what we had to do. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. That is human nature." She shook her head in disbelief. "Your fury. It's divine. I have never seen anything like it." Marcus gave a faint smile. "Divine? No, human. We fight because we must. And when enough of us fight together, the impossible becomes possible." Lysera looked at him, realizing that what she had witnessed was not rage. It was purpose made flesh. That night, the city slowly settled. Fires still burned in distant districts, but life returned. The Zalari people, who had once mocked humans as primitive, now told tales of Captain Marcus Hale and his crew. Across the stars, whispers spread: the humans had come. They had struck back against the Drax, and no one could ignore them. Lysera stood beside Marcus on a hill overlooking Varela. The moons reflected faint light on the wreckage below. She felt awe, respect, and something more. Admiration that ran deeper than fear or gratitude. "You are more than I imagined," she said. Marcus's eyes were steady. "I am only one man, but one man and his crew can change the course of a battle. And if we fight together, perhaps even the Drax cannot stand." Lysera's heart clenched. She had married this man to save her people. But now she realized something greater. She had witnessed the awakening of a force the galaxy had never seen before. Human fury, tempered with honor and purpose, and she knew, without doubt, that when Marcus Hale fought, even the most powerful enemies could fall. The Drax Dominion had returned with vengeance in their eyes. This time it was not a raid nor a single strike. Thousands of warships blotted out the stars above Zellerith Prime, each bristling with weapons and thrumming with deadly energy. The city below buzzed with panic, but Princess Lysera stood tall beside Captain Marcus Hale on the HSS Valiant bridge. "Their fleet is larger than last time," she said, voice tight with worry. Marcus studied the star map. His expression was calm, unshaken. "Numbers alone don't win wars, Lysera. Strategy, precision, and willpower do." Lysera glanced around the bridge. The human crew worked as one, adjusting weapons, monitoring enemy movements, and issuing commands with perfect coordination. She had seen their discipline in past battles, but now the stakes were higher than ever. "They want the planet," she said. "If we fail..." Marcus turned to her, eyes steady. "We won't fail. Not while I breathe, and not while we fight together." The Drax fleet moved like a tidal wave, surrounding the planet. Their main Warlord-class ships charged, plasma beams slicing the void. Even the largest Zalari cruisers trembled under the assault. "Shields at 60%, shouted one officer. "The first wave is breaking through." Marcus raised his hand. "Hold formation. Wait for my mark. All human vessels, prepare the Ares Protocol." Lysera's eyes widened. "The Ares Protocol? You used it before at Varela, but..." "No time to explain," Marcus interrupted. "You will see." The battle began with a thunderous roar. The Drax fired first, massive red beams cutting toward the Valiant and surrounding human destroyers. But Marcus's strategy was precise. He had positioned his fleet behind the outer Zalari ships hidden from the enemy sensors. "Engage," he ordered. In an instant, the Ares Protocol activated. Hundreds of concealed satellites and drones erupted from hiding spots among asteroids and orbital debris. White-hot energy beams struck simultaneously across the Drax formation. Ships exploded mid-flight, torn apart before their weapons could even fire. Lysera gasped. They can't withstand this." Marcus's eyes were calm. "It's not just the weapons. It's the humans. Every strike is coordinated, every move synchronized. They fight as one." The Drax, stunned and disorganized, attempted to regroup, but Marcus's mind was faster. Flank them from both sides. Deploy boarding pods on all damaged vessels. Cut their engines. The human destroyers darted through the battlefield like shadows, striking swiftly at enemy weak points. Lysera watched in awe as human marines boarded Drax ships, neutralizing threats in hand-to-hand combat. A massive Drax officer, twice the size of a human, swung a heavy energy staff at a soldier. The human caught the blow, twisted, and knocked the Drax into the wall with a single precise strike. Lysera's mouth fell open. She had seen alien warriors battle before, but humans moved with a combination of strength, speed, and intelligence she had never imagined. Marcus moved among the fighting like a storm. His presence alone gave soldiers courage. When a crew hesitated, he spoke once, "Move. Every second counts." And they moved, obeying instinctively. In orbit, the Drax flagship, the Crethul, tried to flee. Marcus anticipated it. "Intercept drones now," he commanded. A fleet of small human drones swarmed the Crethul, disabling engines and weapon systems. The massive ship faltered, trapped between human destroyers and satellites firing from multiple directions. Lysera pressed herself against the viewport. You've trapped the flagship." Marcus nodded slightly. "One move, one opportunity. This is the culmination of everything we've prepared for." Boarding pods launched, carrying elite human forces. The Drax soldiers on the flagship were overwhelmed in minutes. Marcus led the charge personally, moving with precision and purpose. Every enemy that stood in his way fell, not because of brute force alone, but because he anticipated their moves, striking at the exact moment. Lysera had never seen such efficiency in combat. Humans fought with unity and strategy that was almost impossible to counter. Below on the planet, Zalari engineers and civilians worked under the protection of human squads. Supplies, weapons, and medical aid were distributed with remarkable efficiency. The humans had not only fought to survive, they had fought to save lives. Lysera watched Marcus issue orders from above. Every human under his command moved as if guided by a single mind. Their determination was a force stronger than any weapon she had ever seen. "Do you see now?" Marcus asked quietly, as if reading her thoughts. "This is what humanity can do when pushed to the edge. We fight not for glory, but to protect those who cannot protect themselves." Lysera nodded slowly. For the first time, she truly understood the legend of human warriors. The Drax, desperate, launched one final assault. Plasma beams raked through space, obliterating smaller human vessels. The Valiant shuddered as shields dipped dangerously low. "Shields failing," the tactical officer shouted. Marcus's eyes narrowed. "This ends now." He activated the final phase of Project Ares. Energy cannons hidden within asteroids, satellites, and moon fragments powered up. The void of space lit up as countless beams cut through the Drax formation, Ships exploded in a dazzling display of fire and light. The Drax flagship attempted to fire its main cannon, but Marcus's maneuvering blocked the trajectory. The Valiant and human destroyers moved in perfect formation, striking simultaneously at weak points. Lysera's heart raced. She had never seen such devastation. The humans were not cruel. They were mercilessly precise, ensuring survival for their allies and destruction for the enemies. Minutes later, the Drax fleet scattered. Their ships limped back into the void, retreating for the first time in centuries. Marcus ordered pursuit only for the stragglers. The rest were left to carry news of their defeat. The battlefield was silent except for drifting debris and the distant fires on the planet below. Lysera approached Marcus, her voice trembling. You've done the impossible. Entire fleets destroyed. Marcus shook his head. Not impossible. Necessary. Every life we saved, every victory we earned came from determination, not miracles. She studied him carefully. He was wounded, exhausted, yet his eyes burned with unwavering resolve. She realized then that humans were not just fighters. They were survivors, strategists, and guardians all in one. Days later, Zellereth Prime celebrated the humans' victory. The city, once filled with fear, now shone with hope. Zalari leaders who had doubted Marcus and his crew offered sincere thanks. Lysera stood beside Marcus during the ceremony. People bowed, cheered, and whispered tales of the human captain who had saved worlds. She looked at him, admiration and gratitude flooding her heart. You fought not for honor, not for glory, but for everyone. You are more than anyone imagined. Marcus smiled faintly. I am only one man, Princess. One man and his crew, but when we fight together, we can protect anyone, anywhere. Lysera's silver eyes softened. She had married this human to save her people. But now she realized something greater. She had married a force that could change the fate of the galaxy. Later, on the balcony overlooking the stars, Lysera whispered, The universe will never forget today. Marcus stood beside her, calm and steady. No, but they will also learn that humanity is not to be underestimated. When pushed, we rise. When threatened, we fight. And when we fight together with purpose, even the strongest enemies fall. Lysera leaned slightly against him, feeling a sense of peace she had not known for years. Then our people are safe. For now. Marcus placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. For now, yes. But if the Drax return, we will be ready. Humanity does not yield. We endure and we protect. The twin moons reflected off the scorched planet below. Fires still smoldered, but life had returned. Humanity's fury had been witnessed, not as chaos, but as justice, discipline, and purpose combined. And as Lysera looked at Marcus, she understood fully. The man she had married was not only a savior, he was the embodiment of a force the galaxy had never known, a force called humanity.